home. Like you can't be in that world of grief forever. You can't live with the dead. You have to return to the world. Like you know that. You know that it's an animal. Like, okay. Religions say like, okay, after X number of months or years, like you're done grieving, you're done, you know? I always want to take out everything that can be taken out. Like this Aristotelian idea of like, you want the piece to be as short as possible. Yeah, I think that's like the Poetics. That's what I learned from that. You take out everything that can be taken out and still stand. And then you're like, take out this leg and you're like, okay, now the thing falls apart. And then now the thing crumbles. So you put that leg back, but you want as few narrative beats as there are necessary in order to make the story whole. Like he talks about like the most beautiful animal is one that you can take in in one glance. So like, it's not that you got to like look over on this side of the elephant. Now you got to look at this side of the elephant. And like, obviously now I as I say it, I'm like, well, I'll just stand back far enough and you can see the whole elephant. But the point is like, you want something that you can hold in your mind. You want a shape or a narrative that you can hold in your mind, sort of in one glance, so to speak. Yeah. So that's why I'm always like, would that seem necessary or could it have gone?
No, I'm glad it's there because so much of it ties into everything. And I remember my mother explaining that Christians have this idea of stained glass, the idea of like, well, just like, well, or even the U2 song, all the colors will bleed into one. And Jews are like, nah, you stay over there. We'll stay over here. We're not going to proselytize. We're not going to ring your doorbell. Matter of fact, if you want to join, it's going to take you a lot of time. We're going to tell you, no, thank you. Fuck off. Goodbye. And it's not all the colors bleeding into one. But at the same time, that it's not living in the illusion of your isolation of self, which is a kind of a bleeding into one of some sort. And the idea of it being crushed into all these different colors, for me, it was the idea of like, well, I have to tell you this. I knew this would be fucking therapy because your book is like the fixer. I'm like, wow, is everyone going to turn Sheila into their fucking therapist now? Because it's like, I remember like when I was being outed. And
so that year that happened to you was around the time, because I remember being in New York with Margot and seeing on the TV Britney Spears cutting off her hair. So that was like the same year or a year away from that, like time of falling away and like things breaking apart and like the image disintegrating and dissolving and having to, and thank God that happened, right?
Yeah, well, it needed to be done for me. It is like what Mira goes through in terms of her father dying and feeling. I really related to that just like, I use this metaphor of we've seen it in movies where there's a battlefield, like the fog of war, the smoke, and you don't even want to know who's still alive or what the damage is, right? There's just a mess. So it was kind of like that, and like that curling up into a leaf.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
But it's like art and love brings us back, it's being willing to go to that edge. It's the way that, why does she reach out? Why does she want Annie to come rescue her? Why does she allow Annie to?
Yeah, but you can't be dead forever. Like you can't be on the battlefield. Like you got to go home. Like you can't be in that world of grief forever. You can't live with the dead. You have to return to the world. Like you know that it's an animal. Like, okay. Religions say like, okay, after X number of months or years, like you're done grieving, you're done. Somebody has to tell you, or you have. like there has to be an end to that. So
it comes across you're very much having been held and anchored. And I'm always so moved when I'm around someone where it's clear they're grounded.
I mean, I think like writing makes me okay, like honestly, and I'm sure you feel the same way, and I'm sure everybody who feels compelled to write feels that way. Like you figure out your place in the world, your attachments, like your humanity for yourself. Like you've got to invent it yourself. And I think that that's the writing that I'm interested in, where I can feel like the writer's like, I actually have to invent everything for myself because I have no idea. No one's ever told me. I don't know. I've got to start from scratch. Like, okay, what is a human? What's the world? What is love? You know, and they write to find that answer, find those answers for themselves. And like, because you can't live without those answers. So I like the people that have to figure it out themselves because they have no idea. For whatever reason.
What's been the number one question that people have asked you about Pure Color?
Well, this is the terrific thing. I mean, first of all, like I haven't had that in many interviews. Like this is number 5 or something. But I really, after motherhood, like I really wanted to write a book that I could have different conversations that would allow me to have, if I had 20 interviews, I could have 20 different conversations. Because with motherhood, like I had 20 interviews and I somehow always ended up more or less having the same conversation. And I'm just like, I can't do that. That I don't want to do that ever again. So like, this is going to be a book where, yeah. And so far that's what's happened. Like I've had 5 interviews or 6 interviews or 4 or whatever. And like, I've had like 4, 5, 6 different conversations. So there hasn't been like, you know, with motherhood, I could tell you what was the question that I got asked. But with this one, there hasn't been that.